We are in an interesting time when much of what we digest, in the way of news and information, happens in a very different way than it did many decades ago when there were only a handful of networks, newspapers, and radio stations to get it from. There was also much less bias presented in the news. We were given straightforward journalism that sought to get to the truth, even when it was painful, and even when political careers were destroyed. Perhaps, news has never truly been completely reliable, but certainly it was more reliable than it is today. Beyond the 24-hour news cycle, of course, the advent of social media outlets also changed a lot of the ways we receive news and information. Discussions or opinions that would otherwise be relegated to the dinner table or other social gatherings, and perhaps the occasional letter to the editor, now moved into more public territory. Social media is largely a place where everyone has an individual voice that they can share with masses of other people. But that's not what everyone wants, of course. And after Trump's re-election efforts in 2020, we saw a side of truth that doesn't want to be heard, and we saw freedom of speech come under fire. Suddenly, truth was not being determined or examined. It was simply being decided. It doesn't necessarily mean that many people can't still have a voice. People, such as the Springboard, can still freely write or publish blogs or articles sharing thoughts and opinions, or sharing findings on certain topics that are interesting that others may also find interesting. But the sites through which those thoughts and opinions can be shared, such as Facebook, X, and elsewhere, can be limited. That can have a great impact on who gets to see it, let alone for it to be found at all. When one group determines what information gets disseminated, or limits the ability for people to share it, it is essentially censorship. When Elon Musk took over X, his aim was to put an end to that and allow a freer forum for people to express themselves. It can be hotly debated whether or not he has actually accomplished that, or if people even believe him. Nonetheless, social media is still pushing back on certain speech. That can be illustrated in the recent decision by Instagram to limit political speech in particular. Or does it have to do with Trump's popularity? While the limit is presumably on all political speech, of course conservative speech is most likely the main target. The debate is not about whether or not the news and information itself, as a result of having many more perspectives and opinions, is better. What social media, blogs, podcasts, and whatever other media source is used to disseminate information offers is another side. An alternative. In many ways, I do think that makes things better. Otherwise, what you are left with is a centralized and coordinated source who collectively decide what is true or not, or what is news or not. That makes news and information potentially propaganda. Because when one group can control the flow, that's what propaganda is. Beyond the mere limiting of news and information being a problem, it's the agenda behind it. The media, and even many people in social media executive offices and boardrooms, tend to be strongly slanted to the liberal side. In order for people to have the ability to make informed decisions, all sides must be able to be heard. It is always better to form an opinion based on multiple perspectives and sources rather than rely on only one. Especially when it comes to politics, I think it is important for people to be able to think openly and constructively. If we had a media, now, that were more prone to tell the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, perhaps a decision like Instagram's would make more sense. But that's not the world we are currently living in. What is called truth now is more questionable than ever, and less able to be trusted. Rather than truth always being told simply as it is, truth is often shaped and configured to fit narratives, or push goals and objectives. People need to hear all sides and other perspectives so they can better decide for themselves and draw their own conclusions rather than be led to conclude things through a single source. That is not only why freedom of speech is so important, but also necessary. Instagram members can opt back into political content. But the first choice should be to be able to see and hear the content before an ultimate decision is made whether it should appear at all. How many people will know they can opt back in? How many people will even know the content is missing? The decision also puts direct control into the hands of a very select group of people to decide what we will see or hear. Because, of course, some news may be viewed as vitally important and get allowed to pass through the filters. Limiting information in any way is not a good thing for anyone. Every American, regardless of their political leanings, should want to have every word at their disposal. There may be some people who don't like certain political speech and may be happy about the decision. But they should also know that there may come a time when the tables are turned, and the ones who control the news and information may reside on the other side and silence them as well.